Yo, Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be looking at a really exciting build, and that's going to be using a lightning great katana with an offhand Smithscript dagger. So these are both new weapons in the DLC, and we'll be doing this both with lightning infusion, and we will be trying some bleed infusion as well. It's not quite as optimal as maybe you'd get on a arcane build, but I think it's a lot of fun to try it out. And yeah, let's take a look at some of the details about this build. Alright, so this is going to be a level 139 build with 64 dexterity if you've got Millicent's prosthesis, and then 37 endurance, 11 intelligence, and 11 faith, which are both requirements for the Smithscript dagger, and then just 60 vigor, so pretty standard stuff. Also, we're going to be rocking the Helm of Solitude, Knight's Cavalry armor, and gauntlets and greaves of Solitude, and I'm just so happy to have armor that kind of complements the Knight's Cavalry chest piece. I feel like that was something that was lacking for a while in the base game, so having some just kind of all black armor is really nice. As for our talismans, we can be using the Rotten Wing Sword insignia and Millicent's prosthesis, and that's going to be because the Smithscript dagger gets those buffed pretty quickly. As you can see, these attacks come out quite fast, and if you do end up landing a lot of them, then proccing the successive attack bonuses with Millicent's prosthesis and the Rotten Wing Sword insignia is not very difficult. So that's kind of the theory there. We can also go for something like this setup with the Claw Talisman as well as the Spear Talisman, and that will increase a lot of the different attacks we get with the Great Katana. So the jumping attacks are quite strong, and then you get a lot of pokes throughout this moveset. So the crouching attack is a poke, the second R1 in the attack chain is also a poke. So you'll probably be using a lot of pokes. The running light is also a poke. So the Spear Talisman definitely makes sense in my mind. So I would say either the successive attack route or the just kind of jumps and pokes route would be a good talisman setup, but you can definitely adjust how you'd like. Focusing on the moveset a little bit, we do have just a really nice set of slashes from the Great Katana that come out pretty delayed, so I feel like it's really good for mind games. You can do a lot of stuff like just go for an attack like this, which looks kind of similar to the Ash of War, but they do have different timings, so you get that big overhead slash, and it also looks similar to the just kind of block animation. So if you're blocking, going for a neutral light, or going for the stance Ash of War with the light attack, it just all looks kind of similar and all has different timing, and it's really good for kind of catching your opponent off guard. Another thing that I really like about it is going for one of these like pretty delayed jumping attacks with the jumping heavy. I feel like that's something that also catches people off guard and is quite nice. If we want to focus too on the offhand daggers, obviously these are the thrown daggers, so they're kind of interesting. I think they have a lot of potential, and honestly, like, they feel pretty brutal, I think, for other people to be playing against. So the one-handed moveset, just as an offhand, is kind of nice. You can kind of go for a quick attack after just a light attack and get in a little bit of chip damage. This can be nice if you think they're going to roll away, but it does almost no poise damage, so oftentimes you'll get punished for it. But if you want to switch over to the two-handed moveset, then you have access to a lot of jumping attacks that I find really good. I find the uncharged heavy to be really just frankly bad. I would say stay away from the R2 unless you're going for a jumping attack or a running attack. Those have much more accurate just kind of projectile placement. The jumping light is also pretty good, but I think the jumping heavy was probably my favorite. Running light's not bad, and the crouch attack is not bad. What's interesting though is, as I mentioned, these are lightning infused. You can bleed infuse them, and you can put a whole bunch of different Ashes of War on them. So I put Beast Roar on this just because it's also projectile, but it does a lot more poise damage, so it's much more likely to poise break your opponent, where these are not. Also, one thing to note is that you can definitely get headshots with these, so we'll see that in the duel portion of the showcase, but headshots are totally a thing. So that's pretty awesome, and especially if you kind of know what you're looking for, a lot of times you'll be able to get them. Like if an opponent is going for an attack, let's say with a Great Katana, and they go for a running light attack, you can see how their head kind of, your character model's head dips down a little bit. And so if you time kind of a fading jump with the Smithscript daggers and go for just like a light attack, jumping attack, while they're in this kind of lunge forward animation, a lot of times you'll get that headshot. So yeah, we'll just talk about that more. But honestly, like I feel like the synergy here is so cool, having this as an offhand weapon, or just an option to kind of switch over to it and have just kind of consistent pressure from neutral. It just feels strong, and just kind of like the options you get as a wizard, but you know, I don't know, like it's just really interesting on a dexterity build, and I'm super excited to just try these more and more. It was hard for me to stop playing to make this video, honestly. As always, if you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I'd definitely appreciate it. And yeah, let's go ahead and hop into the invasions and the duels. Alright, so we're going to be doing all of these invasions in the tower settlement area in the DLC, and I feel like I'm pretty big fan of this area. It feels kind of like the Halig Tree, also somewhat like just a lot of the areas in Dark Souls 3. It has good kind of verticality to it, and there's a fair amount of PvE to help you out, which is really nice. There's also like corners, and just, you know, you're not just in an open field, so it just feels much better to invade in an area like this. That said, there's also some drop-offs where you can fall to your death, and there are definitely some dead ends, so you definitely want to kind of know the area as best you can. I definitely got knowledge checked in this space a couple times where, you know, I thought I was going into a place that I could get out of, and it turned out to be a dead end or something like that, or I fell off a cliff, that type of thing. So just kind of knowing the area is going to be helpful, and that's part of what I'm trying to do as I invade more in the DLC, is to just get a better understanding of specific areas, especially these like legacy type dungeons. So we're going to go ahead and focus in on this 3v1 here. We're getting a decent amount of damage off with our great katana. We're definitely trading somewhat, and in this moment we're kind of backpedaling into an area with no PvE. It has kind of a nice like built-in roundabout in the back, so what happens is you can go down a set of stairs on one or two sides, and what you can actually do is just wrap around one side and go up the other. So we'll end up trying to do that. I definitely recommend that kind of strategy if you find yourself running down this corridor. Just get to this big room and then circle back, and you can go back towards an area with PvE and just kind of a little bit more openness to it. So everyone is super aggro here. The host has actually stayed up on the stairs, and it's just a 2v1 here. Because of everyone's aggressiveness, I'm going to go ahead and throw a sleep pot, and that allows me to get one player to very low health. I go ahead and swap over to the Smithscript daggers and just kind of start throwing them. If they stop, they're kind of in a bad spot because they're just going to get hit by projectiles, and so we can see here how useful that is in that moment. So now it's just me and the player with the CGS, but actually the host is here and they've got the Nox Flowing Hammer, so we need to look out for that. The host was like very unpredictable. They were just really into like hammers and axes, and would go for their Ashes of War pretty liberally, which I mean isn't that unusual, but it was just kind of difficult to negotiate it in that space. But we do get a nice jumping attack on the player going for their Dragon Breath, and now it's just me and the host. They're going to go for their Nox Flowing Hammer again. They managed to knock me out of the air, but because I'm on the floor, the follow-up doesn't connect, so that actually works out very well in my favor. And here we just kind of get aggressive. We don't let them attack out of stun and manage to finish them off for a successful 3v1. So definitely enjoyed that one, and we can move on to the next one where we have, again, a group of 3. These players were all over-leveled. I think I got like somewhere around 50,000 runes from each of them, so definitely not in like the, I don't know, like 5,000 runes that you normally get from somebody in the 139 bracket. This person is using the martial arts, I think, and they, yeah, it's a totally new moveset to me, so I kind of just get in trouble, I would say. I'm not sure if they're going for their Ash of War there, but it seemed to have hyper armor, which was surprising to me. The martial arts having any sort of hyper armor seems unusual, but you know, we're still learning a lot about this stuff, so I think we'll get a feel for it. This is a spot where you can fall to your death, so that was something I had done before, and this time I paid attention and did not fall to my death, so that's kind of what I was saying about learning the area. I was hoping maybe somebody would rush off and just kind of jump off for no reason, but they just stayed on the platform, which makes a lot of sense. This player here is running a Reduvia with an offhand fingerprint shield, which is not a great setup to be playing against. Reduvia is pretty oppressive, and the offhand shield that is very hard to break is also frustrating to play against. So again, we're going to go for a turn and burn with the sleep pot, and I just feel like that's such a helpful thing when you have somebody that's super aggressive, or you know, if you have somebody turtling behind a shield, just a sleep pot like that can give you some free hits and kind of put them on the back foot and give you just a little bit of breathing room. In that moment, the other host, or the other phantom rather, did manage to die to some PvE, I believe, and now it's just a one-on-one with the host here. And as you see me try to attempt the chase down with the Smithscript daggers, you can see that they're actually kind of balanced in the sense that they don't have super long range, and they also consume a decent amount of endurance. So you can't really just spam them and hit them from range as long as they're running in a straight line. You actually have to be kind of in a decent space between you and your opponent, and also you can't just spam too much, otherwise you're going to run out of stamina pretty quick. So there you could see the bleed proc pop, and something we definitely enjoy seeing, and we get the finish. Next up we have a 2v1. We do get the finish with the Smithscript daggers, and just we had a little bit of stealth going on in the beginning, so that's not often a tactic that I employ, but it is a good tactic. Getting your surprise attack in and just immediately being able to chase down a player that's not expecting you is very, very strong. So this player is also going to be running some twin blades, so definitely some bleed in the mix. We're back on our lightning setup rather than our bleed setup, but we still get a decent amount of damage, and we're also getting some headshots in with the Smithscript daggers. So pretty nice to have that happen. You know, 344 damage from like throwing daggers, just it feels like a lot. So I don't know, it's going to be super cool to see how these are incorporated into the meta or not, and just where they fall within invading tools and dueling tools. And you know, if people end up liking them a lot, I certainly do. I think they're pretty unique, and I think the skill ceiling for them could be quite high. Like if you get really good at free aims and getting headshots with them, I think that'll be quite insane. Also on arcane builds, I just feel like for status pressure from neutral, they're going to be quite wild. So eventually me and some PvE do just kind of collect the host here, and we're able to move on to our next 3v1. And here we have a player running a Zweihander with Bloodhound Step, so that's kind of a scary thing. The forward momentum as well as just the crouch attack that comes out afterwards is pretty pretty annoying to deal with sometimes. And just having like 3 people in this open area is not really working out well for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and back off a little bit, see if I can kind of put them all in a more narrow space. I don't really want to get hit with projectiles. I also want to have some corners. So I go ahead and use Rain of Arrows. That was recently nerfed, but still does a decent amount of damage. Less poise damage for sure, but it's a nice option to have on hand. Here, unfortunately, we hit the wall and don't get our running heavy in on the wizard there in the back, but that's okay. We'll be coming back for them later. But we do kind of need to reset back to neutral. We're hanging out in some area with some PvE now, just kind of progressing through the level a little bit, letting kind of the host and the other phantom focus on the PvE, so we have a little bit of time to focus on the player with the Zweihander. And we're just throwing out some of the Smithscript daggers, also swapping over to our Great Katana, just kind of, you know, feeling the synergy, figuring out where it makes sense to go for these types of hits. And now we're in a pretty good area where there's some PvE on the bridge behind me, and they're just kind of shooting projectiles at these players. So that is just a really nice spot to be in for me, where there's potential damage they could be taking. One of the players throws down a warming stone, so in the same spot I try to throw a sleep pot just to discourage them from hanging out. And that also signifies to me that maybe the phantom that dropped the warming stone is out of heals, and it does seem like they were out of heals, so we were able to chase them down and get the finish. Now the other phantom there is trying to take on some PvE and actually dies to it in the process. While that PvE is not super difficult to kill, it does hit very, very hard. So it's nice to just have some help from some of those bigger guys. And here we're throwing out some of the Smithscript daggers. You know, seeing how, you know, if it makes sense to use them. But getting some chip damage in. It's kind of difficult to figure out like where exactly to space with them, because if your opponent is moving forward, you need to be kind of close to them, otherwise they don't have the range to reach. But they can kind of end up your opponent can kind of cover that ground fairly quickly. So we end up just going for some light attacks with the Great Katana, and we can just see what great roll catch potential they have. Great Katanas are super fun. I haven't used the Power Stance moveset, but I am very excited to try it. I'm just pretty interested in what that's going to be like. So next up we have a player that's edge walking quite hard with Bloodflame Blade on some talons. Their Phantom immediately dies and then they start running away. So kind of a big ego check. We can go ahead and start chasing them down here. We try to grab a backstab, it doesn't quite work out. They go for Endure and then a R2. We use that kind of time to just hit them with a couple of the daggers. It's really nice, like if you have an opponent that's in a longer Ash of War, you can super safely just get in some chip damage, especially with the bleed ones. You can just get in some extra blood loss buildup, or at least maintain the blood loss you have built up. And because the Great Katana has innate bleed, it also is conducive for that blood loss. So a blue comes in and we're able to finish them off before the host is able to help. They're pretty distracted by this PvE. This PvE is pretty tough, so I'm not surprised that they're having some difficulties either finishing that off or taking care of both of us simultaneously. We're not rushing in too much. We're trying to space their claw attacks, and the Great Katana is a great way to do that. And then as they run away, we get in a little bit of chip damage with the Smithscript daggers. And really, it just builds up so much over time. It makes your neutral game, it needs to be much more precise when you're playing against the Smithscript daggers, because if you're just kind of throwing out random swings in neutral, I can just stay back and toss daggers at you, and it builds up a lot over time. So I just feel like that's part of the reason it's such a strong kind of facet to the build. I'd be interested to see if anybody runs just pure Smithscript daggers, because really they have no poise damage is the big thing. So because you can put different Ashes of War on them, and you can also get critical attacks, so you can get backstabs with them, like there's definitely high potential for big damage and like burst damage essentially, but it's difficult with no poise damage. You kind of need poise breaks in a lot of situations in invasions. And maybe you can make them work in duels. I wouldn't be surprised if we see like light roll builds that have Smithscript daggers, and really just kind of like buff the damage as much as possible and go for multi-hit talismans. So that could be potentially cancerous, but I feel like as just kind of a component of a more melee like style build, they're just really nice. And here we can see getting some headshots in, getting a bunch of hits off in a row, and getting like over 400 damage. So just very big damage potential, and I don't know, I think they're a lot of fun. I'm going to try them on other weapons as well. I'm curious to see how they work with colossal swords. Just a really cool weapon type, and something, at least because I haven't fought it too much myself, I think it's a lot of fun, and I'm happy that it's in the game. If I have to play against it, I might feel differently, but it's pretty cool just to have that as the moveset. And honestly, with the DLC, there's so many different weapons that I'm really excited to try. And like, I'll show up in the arena and see players using a weapon I've never seen before, and like I have no idea what the moveset is, and I'm just like, oh man, I can't wait to try that out and see how it combos with other different weapons. And I just think the synergy potential for this game right now is kind of off the charts. So here we can see everybody's just kind of turtling, so we're just going to throw daggers until we're out of stamina. A good tactic, I would say. And they're going to start throwing some projectiles of their own, or going for dragon breath, that type of thing. This is kind of a dangerous spot to be in when they've got Dragon Breath and Bolt of Grand Sax and all that. We're going to try to potentially guard break them. I'm not sure if I swap my talismans earlier or if I do coming up, but I do want the hammer talisman on just because I see how many people are turtling. And here we have an unfortunate moment where we get the double guard break and then get the 0 damage riposte. So definitely unfortunate. We probably should have gotten the kill in that moment, and then we get hit with the Taker's Flame. So just overall very unfortunate. And then they go for another Taker's Flame, which we decide to roll based on sound, and we miss the riposte again. So just kind of heartbreaking there, but we're going to go ahead and get out of this area and try to bait them towards this PvE. So this guy was really my friend for a lot of these invasions. It's nice having some like actual challenging PvE to help you out and kind of like punish players that are just too aggro and are, you know, progressing through the level without really knowing what's coming. So here we take a decent amount of damage, we get the blood loss in the mix, and we get a nice running heavy. We swap real quick over to Misericord just for a quick swing, and then swap back for another heavy attack. We're going to need to back off a little bit. We get some daggers thrown as well, but the PvE is just really helping us out here, so we're able to get the victory. And now we can move on to the duel portion of the showcase. Alright, starting out, we're going to have a great katana mirror, and as is custom, we both go in our overhead stance and spin around a couple times. So, good to have a nice serious duel with another professional. They go for one of the light attacks with the great katana, and we're able to actually catch them with a running attack. Unfortunately, we get a backstab grab instead of just the overhead light attack, which probably would have anti-aired them, but that's okay. We need to back off here as we do have quite a lot of blood loss buildup accumulated, and we're able to get that ballast off and go for a running heavy attack. And the tracking on the running light attack with the great katana is not amazing. A lot of kind of the moveset is not amazing in terms of tracking, but here we can see that kind of thing I was talking about in the beginning, where you're able to use a jumping attack with the Smithscript daggers and just get a nice headshot punish with a player that's trying to go for like a just kind of running light attack with a great katana, or anything that really puts their head in a lower position. So I'm going to be curious if there's headshot true combos that are going to be possible. I know like the overhead chomp on some of the halberds are, you know, a true combo with the headshot if you throw a fan dagger. So I think there's going to be opportunities like that with this weapon, but we'll definitely see. Next up we have another player running a great katana, and I think we'll get another headshot with the Smithscript dagger here as well. So I think, yeah, it's pretty consistent. Like I hadn't been using this weapon for that long, and I felt like, you know, you could definitely get fairly consistent headshots with it, especially if you're knowing just kind of when you're looking for these kind of hits with it. So here we can see them going for a lot of kind of the lunging light attacks. We're all set up with our Smithscript daggers, and here we go for that fade jumping heavy attack and get the headshot for the finish. So yeah, it's a super fun weapon to use, and just like has a ton of headshot potential, and I feel like that just makes it a lot more interesting than, you know, it doesn't feel like you're just spamming daggers if you have kind of this plan to punish certain things. So next up we have a player using, looks like a power stance curved swords with maybe a unique Ash of War, something I'm not too familiar with. That's the case with most of this stuff, but yeah, we're gonna go ahead and throw out some of our Smithscript daggers, and then also be swapping back over to our great katana. And these do have the bleed build up in this situation. Here we go for the overhead stance, and you can see again, like they're able to kind of run around it. The tracking is not amazing, but it does do a lot of damage when it hits. It's also worth noting that it doesn't have much hyper armor, so and it doesn't poise break in the same way that like Unsheath does. So I feel like, I don't know, if it were up to me, I think I would give it the same poise damage that Unsheath has. So you know, the heavy, or I guess the light attack would probably be the one that would you know, do like a tier 3 stun or something, knock out players from most things. Maybe not the 3 hits, maybe just the last one in the heavy attack like we just saw there, but yeah, it's still a lot of fun to use, and I think it's just a really cool Ash of War. So here we're able to actually finish off this player without taking any damage. We're using the blood loss version of this setup, so that was pretty ideal against a player that's not really running any armor. Next up we have a player that's running the Peta weapon, I believe. So this is a new fist weapon that is very, very long, has pretty crazy range, and this player was using an Ash of War that I don't know what it is. I was very surprised that I wasn't getting hit there, but I was just kind of trying to roll on instinct, and it ended up kind of working out. Here we get a little bit of chip damage, try to bait them into being aggressive. It seems like that has iframes, so I was kind of expecting to trade with it, but they kind of just went straight through me. But eventually we do get a running heavy attack and finish off that player. So next up we have another player going for a little bit of buff. You can see there we go for the Smithscript daggers, and they don't have enough range to reach the player. So they like disappear after, I don't know, like 10 meters, 10, I don't know what the unit of measurement in Elden Ring is, 10 zakis, but yeah, it's just like not that, it doesn't have great range. They just kind of disappear and you'll be trying to hit players and it just won't happen. But we do end up defeating that player as well. So yeah, that's kind of a long tangent about the range of the Smithscripts, but you'll get a feel for it the more you use it. Here we go for a nice jumping heavy with the Smithscript daggers and then pull out our great katana, and we're kind of just swapping back and forth. And really I feel like that's a great way to play this setup, is just be very fluid with how you're swapping. If you're either going for two-handed moveset on the great katana, one-handed moveset on the great katana with the offhand Smithscript, or power stancing the Smithscript, just it gives you a lot of options. And here we get a nice roll-in backstab against this Ash of War that's pretty consistent to get that, and we come out with the finish there. So nice victory against player using another bleed setup as well. Here we are using the bleed setup on our end, and we go for a jumping heavy, get some chip damage in, get a little blood loss buildup going. Here I just kind of wanted to test, but the Smithscript daggers do not go through that Ash of War. It does deflect them, so pretty normal projectile behavior, but I just kind of wanted to check. Here we get a very nice headshot as they go for Carrion Piercer. So again, the like lunging, piercing type attacks really leave players open to being headshotted by the Smithscript daggers, and there we do just get the finish with the overhead stance Ash of War. So that pretty much covers all our duels. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. Yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.